Jay, tell the viewers why they should be subscribers to the Audrain Museum Network.
Well, I mean, great videos, new videos. We do about 60 a year, something like that. It's always something different. You know, my favorite thing is, Jay, you did an electric car, I'm not watching anymore. Well, there's a lot to our sport, to our hobby. If you don't like this car, wait a week, something will come along that you like. Maybe it's steam, maybe it's gas turbine, maybe it's internal combustion. But you can't do the same car every week. People, I want more Mustangs. I just want Camaros. You know, well, that's not what we do here. It's the whole encompassing of anything that rolls, explodes, and makes noise.
From 1899 to 2024, here in the Audrain Museum Network. Follow his advice. Hello and welcome to another exhibitions highlight video of our show, History, Luxury, Sport, Automobiles in Newport. For this very special edition, we are joined by the great Audrain friend, Mr. Jay Leno.
Well, thank you, Donald. You always do a great job with these shows. Every 2 months it changes, something like that.
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months it changes, and it's always interesting and different. And I'm curious to go through this one with you. Where do you want to start?
Well, today we're going to talk just about this particular star of the show. This 1927 Isotta-Fraschini 8AS Fleetwood Roadster.
Right.
And it's here in the show because the show celebrates cars that were best in show or class winners at the Audrain Newport Concours d'Elegance. And this Isotta was best in show with the very first show in 2019. At that time it was owned by our great friend, the late Judge Joseph Cassini, a wonderful collector and a man of brilliant taste. And since then, it has come into the Audrain collections. And it has been an absolute wonder to experience.
Yeah, this is the first straight 8 engine. A lot of people think Duesenberg was the first straight 8, but no, this was it here out of Italy. And it's Fleetwood. It's bodied by an American company.
Yes.
It's an Italian engine frame and obviously sent to America and done here, which you could do in those days. You could just buy a chassis. It's like buying the fabric for a suit, but I want my tailor to make it for me. And that's what Fleetwood did. They became part of General Motors. They did all the Cadillacs as well.
Interestingly enough, Jay, that you mentioned that because this is a 1927 car built in late 1926. And it was among the last cars built by Fleetwood as an independent company before they were taken over by General Motors, because by the end of 1927, they were only doing GM production.
Yeah, and of course you had the Depression on literally over the next month or so, and all these companies just either merged with somebody else or went out of business. Yeah.
And of course, this car's also notable claim to fame is the fact that it was ordered by the great Rudolph Valentino.
I know as many cars that, you know, this is Rudolph Valentino. It's a 1950 Cadillac. He died in 26, you know. But yeah.
This car is documented and is the car.
All right.
He, of course, passed away before the car was completed. And Isotta-Fraschini of New York exhibited the car at the New York Auto Salon. And they would not have made up at the New York Auto Salon that it was Rudolph Valentino's car unless it had been. His widow was still alive.
Imagine a salesman, a car salesman lying. That'd be unbelievable. It's like when you buy a dog and the mother's Lassie and the father's Rin Tin Tin. Oh yes, and this dog is the hybrid of you. No, but I know what you're saying. But it's true. I always meet cars that were, I always meet Hitler's Duesenberg. Well, first of all, Hitler never had a Duesenberg. Duesenberg, they were German, but they were American. Rudolph Valentino's car and Al Capone's car. Yeah, those are the things.
Well, you can come to the Audrain Automobile Museum and see Rudolph Valentino's Isotta-Fraschini.
Well, you know what's interesting? I mentioned when I said Al Capone. A lot of people don't know this. The very first official White House bulletproof car was Al Capone's, because
they had seized.
Roosevelt had just had Capone arrested for income tax evasion, and they were afraid he might be assassinated. So the FBI said, "Hey, let's get Al Capone's car. We'll use it as a presidential limousine," which they did. It was the first official merger of crime and politicians in America, where the two came together in common ground.
But certainly not the last.
No, not.
And on a happier note,
yes,
this car obviously is a car of tremendous presence. You drove this car in a wonderful episode of Mansions and Motorcars. We featured the mansion Ochre Court, which you can see here on the Audrain Museum Network. And it was something that we discussed during that drive, the fact that Isotta-Fraschini was known for their engines, and that the character of this car is really quite unique because it is a very Italian car, but with this American body with an Italian flair. I mean, Fleetwood, I think the designer of Fleetwood really understood that this is an Isotta.
Right.
So it almost has the look of an Italian speedboat.
Right. And it's also, you know, it's a car you don't kind of see anymore. It looks like it would be a sporty car, but it's really not. But in a sense it is, because it looks, plus you have to realize this is just one generation from away from the horse. You know, most people had never ridden in an automobile in the teens and 20s. That was like that was like flying in a plane in the 50s or early 60s. Like, it was a huge experience. So for somebody, just the fact that you could go down the road. I mean, these are very truck-like. We drove one, I saw the limousine, which
limousine,
was,
yes.
Oh my God! He had both feet on, had to press the button to turn it. It was really.
There's another great episode of Mansions and Motorcars.
Yeah.
When we did Swiss Village.
Yeah, but this is a little easier to drive, but still quite heavy. This was a man's car in the sexist term of the fact you had to be a big, strong person just to work the controls.
A performance luxury car, which we think was invented recently. This is a great example of it. And thinking about this as well, the Isotta-Fraschini company built their first car in 1901. So the company is only 16 years old when this car, 26 years old when this car was built. And going from a single cylinder de Dion-based car to this magnificent straight 8 in a very short time is quite wonderful.
Yeah, it's a bit like the computer industry in the 90s. It just, each year, everything doubled, got bigger, got twice. Things became obsolete. I realized from one cylinder to this in 20 years, whatever.
20 years, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It's absolutely astonishing. And this car as well, as you can see, the running board is adorned with the Audrain Newport Concours d'Elegance Best of Show trophy. And this car went on a great grand tour for the Audrain collections this year. We showed it at the Concorso d'Eleganza Villa d'Este, which was wonderful to bring it back to Italy, not far from the factory that produced the chassis and engine in Milano. And then it went on to the Geneva Concours d'Elegance, where it won Best in Class. It was at the Salon Privé show in London, where it won Best in Class and was the runner-up for Best of Show. And at the Lugano Elegance, it took Best of Show honors.
Well, that's kind of fun because, you know, the Europeans tend to look at all American cars like the Model T. In Europe, the car was something for the rich. That was it. It was a high-end item. The idea of average people having automobiles seemed ridiculous to them. So to have something like this, American ingenuity and styling, it was really made an impression. And I think it kind of matured them to the American automobile.
And it's also one of these things that, and frankly, this is an interesting point about restoration and presentation of cars. A number of times during this European tour, some European commentators said, well, isn't the car a little bright and flashy? It was a show car.
Right.
The 1926 New York Auto Salon car, so it was meant to be bright and flashy. And it's not, as you mentioned, a competition car, it's not a race car. So it's meant to make a presence when you arrive. And that it certainly does. And it's also so important to think about the context of the theme of the show, which is the name of this exhibition, History, Luxury, Sport. And while this is not, as you said, a sports car, it is sporting. It is certainly historical, both with Isotta-Fraschini, Fleetwood, and Rudolph Valentino. Actually, can't say both for three. And of course, it is incredibly luxurious.
Well, you almost say, what is the luxury part? No roll-up windows, no real protection from the elements. It's so funny to me that the cheapest car you can buy has features that the most expensive, luxurious car from this era couldn't even dream about. I always find that fascinating.
Well, they did build Isottas in this period with roll-up windows.
Right.
But, again, this is a sporting roadster. Right. But I think the luxury here comes in the finishing. If you look at the details in the interior, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, thinking about what was going on with some of the Mercedes-Benzes, and even, frankly, the finishes in some of the Duesenbergs, it's not that flashy inside, as you might expect. But nonetheless, again, there's a very good reason why, first of all, Isotta-Fraschini's biggest export market was the US. And of course, Hollywood loved Isotta-Fraschini's.
Right.
And most people, of course, know Isotta-Fraschini, if they do at all, from the movie Sunset Boulevard.
Right. And the funny thing is, in a day when you get no spare tire at all, this came with 2 spare tires, because that was the idea. Oh, you could always keep going. You got a flat, you just change it. I get another one, just keep going. The idea that, yeah, I always like this era because this is the first era where the car could outlast the man, you know, like in a race. Most cars would break down, but you know, the guy could, the idea of a driver being exhausted and the car still going on, that was relatively new, that something could outlast the human being, you know.
Yeah, and it's also, it speaks volumes to this point in car development where, frankly, the cars are more advanced than the tire technology.
Right.
And the roads were still not as good as they needed to be for the performance the car had available.
Right.
So, you know, the idea of getting a flat tire on a routine journey was
and
really high.
maintenance was unbelievable. I think the recommended oil change was every 500 miles. So that would be like every week you'd be changing the oil in your car. And you have probably 60 or 70 grease points you have to hit. I mean, it's amazing how maintenance intensive these cars could be.
Well, that's also a very interesting point, and I'll make it personal to you, that since I've watched you in action, that you certainly enjoy driving your old cars from the 1920s, 10s, and you have as much fun when you get back to the garage doing all the maintenance as you had in the drive.
Well, that's sort of the fun of it, the idea you have to earn the ability to drive it. Only now you get in and just go, you know, the idea where you had to do all this work. Now you are ready to go for a drive, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, thank you for joining us here in this exhibition highlights video, and thank you very much, Jay, for singing the praises of our Isotta-Fraschini.
Wonderful car.